Hello and welcome everybody to this week's edition of the Travel Coffee Break. I'm Alistair Mackenzie and I've got a bunch of guests with me this week to talk about a couple of subjects. I will introduce them quickly now, though, so that you can see why they're here and what we're going to be talking about. I'm going to be talking to John Baumgartner, who runs hiptraveler.com, which is a really interesting site that combines storytelling with travel product, in effect, and he'll tell us about that. We'll probably kick off with him. Also, I've got with me Mike Young, who many of you will know. Mike is a regular. He co-hosts this with me most weeks when he's about, and some weeks he does one of his magnificent presentations of a particular destination. I've also got Shane Dallas with me because Shane has recently been up to Finland enjoying the Northern Lights, and so he's going to be bringing, as it were, a consumer angle to the Aurora zone, which is Ali McLean, who specializes in taking people up to see the Northern Lights. And last but by no means least, I've got David Phillips with me from Explorers, who specialize in astronomy tours, eclipse tours, which is why we're all here today, in a sense, because my thinking was that having just had an eclipse in the UK, that people's minds will be turned to matters celestial, and a range of other tours around the world, and I think that's going to be really fascinating. So we'll be talking to him shortly. But let's kick off with John Baumgartner. I should remind you, by the way, that we've got the Q&A app, so you should see on your screens when you're watching, top right-hand side. For you guys actually in the Hangout, you won't see it, but top right-hand side there's a little button Q&A, and if you press that, you can actually ask questions as we go through it. So if I'm not being clever enough and asking the right questions, then you can do it, and it makes life easy. For those of us in the Hangout, on the left-hand side, it's one of those apps, Q&A, and if you press it, you'll see that it puts the questions over on the right, so you can see them when they come up. So, okay. John, let's turn to you. We met up at ITB and we were talking about your site, which I think is really interesting. I'm sort of tempted to describe it as a startup, but it's not. I'm not sure when you qualify for not being a startup anymore, because it's a couple of years old, isn't it?
Well, one thing I've learned about starting anything up is that it takes a long time, especially with software. So we've been in sort of a soft beta for about 8 months now, and most of that's been about collecting user feedback and just making improvements along the way. So we have a couple thousand people on the site right now that are happy to use it, but we also want to really expand that to a larger market too. So right now it's just a lot of testing and making sure things are working properly.
Now, it's a really interesting prospect. I've sort of described it just now, but why don't you give us your official version of what it is and how it works?
Sure. Well, probably the best way to do that is to describe where the concept came from. I've been a lifelong traveler, haven't traveled as much as I'd like to, but I'm getting there, and it's always been a huge passion of mine. But every time I would travel, I was always mostly motivated by the visual imagery of a place and also the stories behind the place. So reading blog sites, learning about somebody's experience there, and then seeing imagery was the most motivational thing for me. I have one example where I saw a picture of a Perhentian island off of Malaysia. Now, I would have never chosen one of the Perhentians, a big Perhentian and a small Perhentian. I would have never even known the place existed, but a friend of mine had a beautiful image, and it was the most gorgeous beach I think I'd ever seen. He told me this story about what it was like to be there, and lo and behold, I was sitting on that exact same beach, taking the exact same shot of the exact same pier within 4 months. So really quick, too, to travel 9,000 miles to do that. So the light kind of went off for me that, hey, why is my experience on the typical travel site so mundane, so boring, so just not inspirational. And yet the experience of travel and the experience of travel discovery should be this really exciting thing that's inspirational. So the concept was kind of born of, let's find a way to blend together the travel storytelling with beautiful imagery, and then put the actual tactical, how do I book the trip itinerary details embedded within the story. And so, yeah.
That's the big difference, isn't it? Because frankly, having a site that tells magnificent stories, inspiring stories with photography and everything else, well, there are guys here. That's what Shane's trying to do all the time. What's different about it is that you can action it. You can go, oh wow, I like the look of that, but how do I do it? And in this case, you can actually literally click on it and away you go. For the likes of Shane and Mike here, Mike Young, who are travel bloggers, this isn't competition for them, is it? Because they could write posts on your site.
Yeah, we really view our core competency is building the software, providing the platform. So the platform, and I welcome you guys to go and check out the site if you get a chance. But it's created a bit like a medium.com. Right, so also Medium, but then it also has a database of 50 million destination images, attractions, hotels, all the like that are included in the database. So you can drag and drop those into the actual blog post, and then those become fully actionable. It's a PDF printout, so somebody can take that on their trip. Each item is bookable within the site too. You can share it, and you can collaborate. So our job, we view our job as we have to bring the right inventory in behind that to make that actionable. So we've built in an Expedia API, a hotels.com API, and we're also putting together direct relationships with each hotel and also with tour operators on the back end too, so that everything can be actionable. So we work very, very closely with bloggers. I think we're up to about 500 right now total that use the application to actually embed the itinerary onto their site, or they actually blog on our site and use the itinerary on our site. So you guys will see when you go to the site that if you sign up for the Ambassador program, you can create an itinerary on the site very easily, and then you can embed that to your own site through a Hip Traveler widget, which will allow your reader on your site to read your story and then see the details behind your trip and book the trip that you took. So your itinerary actually resides on your site as well as Hip Traveler, and then it's bookable on both. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. To what extent is it really fine customizable in the sense that, let's take an example here. Shane goes off to Finland and enjoys the Northern Lights and everything else, and he does it with, off the top of my head, Explore Worldwide, or Explore as they call themselves now. Meanwhile, you have on your database product from Ali here at the Aurora zone. So Shane would kind of have to, pretend that his trip was using Ali if you haven't got it. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, we want to keep it as objective as possible too. So in a case where there isn't actually a supplier behind it, behind whatever product has been put in the itinerary, it's best to just leave the supplier blank at that point, and to enter in, this is the tour, this is the type of activity you should do when you're in the area. We're hard at work on the back end here, making sure that we have relationships with each thing that's in. So just give us time, and we'll end up having a supply behind those things, but it's covering the entire world. Right? So it's a bit of a job, just a bit, but we're getting there.
I was looking at it earlier on. Is that Bella I can hear in the background? It's your dog, John.
It's my dog, Misty, unfortunately. She's
right, okay, no.
increasingly smelly, rather like me, actually.
Ali, your dog, Misty, is now making my dog here in La Jolla.
It's an echo.
Bella's created a bug, too.
There's somebody hoovering behind me. I think that's what's upsetting her. I'll just disappear for 2 minutes. I'll be back.
Okay, no problem. I was looking at the site and looking at some of the travel logs, and I was struck by the fact that there's quite a range, because in some places it'll be people just talking about particular experiences, and in other cases it will be sort of an extended tour.
You know, we're kind of experimenting with something right now, and this is the whole soft beta, you know, phase. What I've noticed is it's easier, obviously, for somebody to tell about one experience than it is to go in and create an entire itinerary and write an entire travel log or blog post, right? I mean, obviously, it's much simpler. And you also get a lot of passion from people when they just write about one thing. If I ask each of you to, you know, pick your favorite experience from the last year and give me a quick rundown on it, boy, you can really get that out quick. You know, that's maybe 200 words, 300 words, 400 words, but it's going to be very passionate, it's going to be very exciting, and it's easy for a person to do. So ours is a user-generated content model. We need to inspire people to, you know, comment and submit the same way that they would on a TripAdvisor, let's say. And so I found that breaking it into smaller chunks, tell us these experiences, might be a good way to inspire people to submit more to the site. And then the really interesting part about it, from like a sort of a big data perspective on the back end, is that once we have all these experiences in all these different places, even though they're singular experiences, it's fairly easy to pair those together. So if somebody's looking at Paris and they want to have an auto-magically generated itinerary, let's say, it can look at the top-rated experiences from multiple different people and pull those into an itinerary format for them. Then they can edit that, add or delete as they wish, and it may be an interesting way to create an itinerary on the fly also. But we're still kind of playing with that. So. But you notice there's some that are very long itineraries, and there's others that are very short one-day experiences. Yeah.
Mike, I'm thinking you must be sat there thinking to yourself, this would be worth investigating. I'm putting words in your head now, or in your mouth rather. But from your point of view, I mean, Mike, for those who don't know, writes Mike'sTravelGuide.com, which is well, as the name suggests, it's a guide to particularly European destinations, city destinations. So presumably, that for you, Mike, this would be quite a useful tool.
Yeah, while we were online, I kind of popped into the site to take a look at it because I was kind of curious. And yeah, it potentially could be something that could be of interest. I have to certainly look more into it, but it definitely got me curious enough to at least visit the site.
Nice, Mike.
Okay, right. Let's move on, John. That's really interesting, and I hope that more bloggers will actually take a look and think about adding content into it and building trips, and more travelers go to the site to find inspiration. For you,
can I just add something there? What I really like about it is that good travel writing is exactly what you describe. It is describing an incident in detail. So, you know, using the senses and describing it instead of trying to cover a lot in a short amount of time. So that's what I like about this website concept, is that it tells a story, and stories are the best way to inspire someone to travel.
Totally agree. Thank you.
I think it's really interesting what Shane was saying, in that as a tour operator, we have to be very, very factual. And I love that the blogs give us a chance to actually go out there and express our passion and what have you. We just got to strike that right balance, because if you don't deliver something exactly as you say it will be, then you get problems from your clients. However, when you go out there, as I go to Lapland, as Shane did the other week, very, very regularly, and really passionate about the place, and my experience, because I'm a tour operator, is sometimes different, and I see different sides, and I love that the blogs give us a chance to actually express that passion that we have for the destination, rather than just the mundane holiday text, the description.
I was giving a speech in Dubai at the 2015 Middle East Food and Travel Bloggers Conference, and I put the photo of the Northern Lights I took in the Enontekiö region of Finland, and everyone gasped. But it immediately created a dream as soon as this image came up on the big screen behind me. So you tell a story around a photo like that, and it creates a reaction, whether in writing or in person.
I've got a whole lot of pictures I was hoping I might be able to show you at some stage, but I've no idea how to put them up, Alistair.
Okay, cool.
But the Northern Lights pictures do exactly what Shane says. They just have people, gasping, their jaws dropping towards the floor. It's true. I mean, it is amazing. It's Mother Nature's greatest spectacle, I believe.
And like you said, Ali, the actual blog portion, the reader is counting on the objectivity of that blog. And it's actually hard to lie, if you will, in a mini blog, right? It's not like a review site necessarily. Where
naming no names.
Review sites tend to bring out the worst in people too, right? Or comment streams bring out the worst in people. If they can write one snide sentence, it's easy to do. But it's much more involved. You have to invest a little bit of time in describing an experience, and I think if you describe an experience, more than likely you're going to look for the positive aspects of it as well. So what we've noticed is a real kind of feeling of goodwill and very good. It's almost like a new model for reviews, because if somebody's telling their personal story, I can look at that person also and see what kind of traveler they are. Are they a luxury traveler? Are they an adventure traveler? Are they a backpacker? Are they, what is their personality through the rest of their travel logs they've done, or through the different images they've collected around the world and put in their profile? So I know something about that blogger, and I don't have to tell you guys. You all know this. All the marketing pros out there say that the bloggers are the most influential in just about any industry, actually. They have the highest level of trust from the consumer. Purchase affinity, brand affinity, all these things are #1 with bloggers, and I believe that's because the reader can actually...
But then there's Shane Dallas, and he's well dodgy.
Yeah. They could have a pretty good persona, even though they're a little dodgy.
Yeah, don't trust anyone with a hat, eh, John?
I'm happy to see the hat. If it's your brand...
Let's move on, guys, because I want to give everybody a fair crack of the whip this afternoon. John, you'd be very welcome to stick around, and I would just say to those watching, remember we've got the Q&A app. If you want to click on the little button at the top of the screen there and ask a question, then do, and if John is still with us in 5 minutes' time and you've got a question for him, then maybe we can come back to that. But I want in the meantime to move on to Astronomy, Eclipse, and Northern Lights tours, and I particularly want to bring in David Phillips. For those of you who are watching, I don't know if you can see the thumbnail strip at the bottom there. David is masquerading as Katie, but it is David. And David is the MD of Explorers, which is, I think, a brilliant specialist, niche travel tour operator who does more or less what it says on the tin. David, why don't you tell us what it is that you do?
Sure. Actually, well, thank you very much for inviting me. You've actually given me a promotion to the MD of the company. I'm the operations manager for Astronomy tours. But nonetheless, I essentially put all the tours together that we operate. We, as a company, started way back in the late 70s, focusing on taking people to see total eclipses around the world. And that sort of developed over the years, and certainly in the last 5-6 years since my involvement with the company, where we've diversified and included many Northern Lights tours within our different range of tours that we have, and also we visit We have tours which visit places like Chile and South Africa and other regions where we can see professional observatories as well. So really, I suppose that the two prongs of our business, though, are still very much eclipses and northern lights. And I actually just wanted to pick up on one thing that we were just talking about a moment ago there, in terms of how important blogs are and how important the written word is, I think. When we look at northern lights, it's very easy, the old phrase of the camera never lies, is something that can very easily be thrown back in our faces when it comes to Aurora, because Aurora rarely appear to be as vibrant and as colourful as we see on many images. Having said that, what they do is that they move and they dance and they have a dynamic activity that I think is never represented very well in any, certainly not on any still photograph, and even in many sort of video images. They just don't do it justice. It's a beautiful thing to witness, and I think that that we can vocalize that, we can talk about that in a way that, as I say, I don't think the camera picks up terribly well. So yes, we certainly do a lot of Northern Lights tours, and that's been a big focus over the last 3 or 4 years. The sun's been at a high level of activity, so the number of occasions on which we're likely to see Aurora has increased over that period. And so this last year, I've seen some fantastic displays up in Iceland. That's where I tend to spend a lot of the winter time. Colleagues go to Sweden, but of course, what we're also interested in. Sorry, I
was going to say, let's come back to the Northern Lights, because that's very much Ali's territory and also Shane's. But I'm really interested in some of the other activities that you've got. And firstly, we're all here partly because I was thinking, we've just had a solar eclipse in the UK. That must have sort of triggered people's enthusiasm for these things. And we had a conversation earlier on this morning. I was saying, have you noticed an increase? And the answer was,
undeniably, yes. Yes, we've had a huge number of hits on our website. It's great deal of interest in our tours. We've had bookings for eclipses that we've got planned. We've got eclipses planned for next year, for 2016 in Indonesia, for 2017 in the States, another one, an annular eclipse in Tanzania in 2016. So we've got quite a few eclipses over the coming few years stacking up, and people are very, very interested in these. I was up in Svalbard last week. That was where I was with a group of 84 of our passengers witnessing what was, for me, one of the most superb eclipses I've seen. I've seen 5 total eclipses in my time, and 2 annulars. And last week's eclipse in Svalbard just was the most perfect. The weather conditions were superb. We had blue sky. We had no wind. It was very cold, -24. But the view of the totally eclipsed sun was just breathtaking. It really was. We could see the corona, we could see the prominences with the naked eye. We saw various effects called shadow bands and things like that before and after totality, which were just extraordinary and better than I've ever seen on previous eclipses.
We made a big song and dance about it here in the UK because of its rarity and because it was a near total eclipse. If you were up in Inverness, it was it wasn't even a near one down in London. We never saw it. The sun came out about several hours later, but that was.
Well, I'd like to pick up on that actually.
Yeah, but what I was let me just what I was just going to say was that what people forget is that it may be a rare event here, but there is. It's a pretty regular one around the world, and that's really where your kind of business model comes in, because in any one year there will be about sort of 4, that kind of number, 3 or 4 eclipses of one form or another.
Yeah, you have total eclipses on average every 18 months somewhere in the world. You'll have annular eclipses slightly more frequently than that. So most
an annual eclipses are partial.
It's kind of a partial. It's what we call a central eclipse, whereby the moon passes directly in front of the sun, but it's at a cycle of the orbit of the moon where it's slightly further away from us than it normally is, so it doesn't obscure the whole of the sun. You don't get the period where the whole of the sun is blanked out and it goes dark and you can see the corona. So you get what we call a ring of fire. You can see the outer circumference of the sun. It's still very bright. You still need to wear the protective eye covering in order to see an annular eclipse. They're not, if I'm honest, as spectacular as a total, but they are an intriguing thing to witness in their own right. So I would certainly advocate going and seeing one, but total eclipses are a quantum leap more impressive than any partial or any annular, and I think that's what I was trying to, trying to cut across you earlier to emphasise. And this is something which often isn't brought out, particularly when we're looking at a partial eclipse, a great partial eclipse from the UK. Great to see, great that many people were interested enough to get out there and try and see it last Friday morning. But there is so much difference between a 99.9% eclipse, a partial that is, and when it goes to totality. When we were in Svalbard last week, that very last few seconds, it's as if the theatre lights dropped. The low level of light just plummets, and suddenly you get this extraordinary sight in front of you. As I say, you can see the corona, the outer atmosphere, this sort of pearly atmosphere of the sun. You see, and you can only see that during a total eclipse. You also see planets, the brighter stars in the sky. It is just the most extraordinary experience, and quite unlike any partial or anything you would have witnessed from the UK last Friday morning.
How many of these total eclipses are non-visible? In other words, that are only visible if you're on the ocean? What percentage about would that be?
Well, nearly every eclipse will pass, the sort of line of the track of an eclipse usually covers several thousand kilometres. So the likelihood is somewhere along that track it will cross the landmass. Many times, and in this instance, it only made landfall in the Faroes and also in Svalbard. So you had to be in one of those two very special places last Friday. 2 years ago, I was 2012, I was down in Australia, and there was a track which just went across the Cape York Peninsula and then went way out into the Pacific and made no landfall again after that. So many of them are spending a lot of the time they're out at sea. And obviously that's
and if they're not
on a cruise ship or something like that.
If they're not out at sea, then equally they can be in places that really you don't want to be. I mean, if it's Afghanistan or somewhere, then or Libya, let's say, those are not destinations you want to be taking tour groups to. How big are the tour groups that you take? I mean, what sort of numbers are you dealing with?
They do vary considerably. Obviously, we're talking only about eclipse trips because Northern Lights and everything like that is different. They occur on a regular interval. But eclipses, because they're so infrequent, and we obviously got to have a huge core of people that want to see them, then we have to really make special arrangements and provision for these sort of much larger groups. It very much depends on where they are. Last Friday.
You've frozen. Okay, gives me a chance. This happened earlier on when we were doing a test this morning with David, and he actually had to log off and then log back in again. So it gives me a chance actually to ask Ali, because you deal in principally in Northern Lights tours. This is the Aurora zone, but do you do other stuff as well? I'm not sure.
Oh, it's all about. We have 3 different brands. We've got a company called Activities Abroad, which is family activity holidays, winter and summer. We have another new brand called Artisan Travel, which we're in the process of developing, and we're going to be launching. We're basically developing the website at the moment. And then we have the Aurora Zone, which is purely focused on Northern Lights holidays and the other stuff that you can do up in the Arctic and in the Aurora Zone. Amazing stuff like dog sledding and snowmobiling and snowshoeing, and I think Shane will agree with me that you can't really comprehend just how amazing it is up north. I know we had pretty decent auroras in the UK last week after what was a very, very significant solar event, but to stand on a frozen lake 250 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle and just surrounded by perfect silence and a pitch black sky, and then watch the aurora start to sort of billow and dance. And as I said before, the movement is the thing about the aurora that the pictures cannot capture. It's absolutely spellbinding. And I think the thing that always strikes me when I'm on that frozen lake is just what our forefathers must have made of the Aurora, because modern science explains it to us. But I wrote a blog recently for the website about the myths and legend, and there's some great ones. And some people have them. The Inuit were using a walrus's head to play a ball game in the sky, and there was quite a few. Well, there was quite a few Inuit had this same belief. And then there was one other group of Inuit had it the other way round, that it was actually walruses playing a ball game with a human head up there in the
You kind of answered my question, because I was jokingly going to suggest to you that since we've had so much solar activity in the last few weeks, and we've seen the Northern Lights creeping down even to the UK. So what do we need you guys for? But I suppose that is it. David's joined us again. I am going to come back to Northern Lights, but I just want to, particularly while he's there and while I might lose him, I just wanted to ask you, David, about some of the other stuff you do, because you also, I'm really interested in the idea that you do trips to observatories to see the night sky from observatories, and you do stargazing trips as well.
That's right, yes. We do a variety of trips which include what we call our stargazing trips, which is where we take people out to sort of pretty remote and dark areas, usually desert areas, where we're pretty much guaranteed of clear skies. We do a tour each year to Morocco, where we go to way out to the fringes of the Sahara, and there's a hotel there that's got a variety of sort of fairly sizable, what I'd call amateur telescopes, but they're 16, 18-inch reflectors, sort of several tens of thousands of pounds or dollars worth of kit on the roof of that hotel, and from there we spend several nights observing various galaxies, nebulosities, clusters, and under what is remarkably dark skies. We also, of course, go out with our laser pointers and point out the various constellations as well, so that people who aren't necessarily such hardcore astronomers can really get to grips with how the sky works. So
that gets me to the next thing I was really interested to find out is who goes on these tours, because and in part I'm looking at the Q&A app, and Jennifer Howes typed in a question earlier on. Jennifer asks, these types of tours sound fantastic. Are they appropriate for families with kids, or are they best suited for to adults only? Now, I think she's probably mostly thinking about the Northern Lights and those activities, but things like the stargazing trips sound as if they could be very family suitable. So what kind of people do you get on them?
Well, we do get a quite wide variety of people. I mean, it depends. We can segment our tours into various sort of categories as to who we get, and certainly the Eclipse tours are very much focused around, tend to be people who are fairly into their astronomy, desperately keen to see the eclipse, and also generally have a high level of sort of background knowledge, or at least, let's say, 50% of them do. We have a lot of other people who just come along for wanting to see and witness the event itself. I think Northern Lights tours are certainly much more mainstream in terms of the sorts of people we get, are sort of more average travellers with a curiosity, but not with a sort of a tremendous depth of knowledge. And then we certainly do have some family trips we've run in the past. We've run a family tour to Jordan, one of these stargazing trips where we take people out of the desert and show them the stars through a telescope. And those are ones that we've actually geared towards the family end of the market as well. What we do try to do is we have on our tours an expert, a UK guide as well as local guides who show us the sights of the country. We have somebody on the tour, be it myself or one of my colleagues, John Mason, James, people like that who are knowledgeable about astronomy, who will then explain the science and indeed some of the sort of legends as you've been talking about with the Northern Lights, but try to get to try to involve everybody and to make sure that everybody understands and really gains an awful lot from the experience. So we're there to facilitate their knowledge and their understanding of what it is that they've come to see. But
I think that's I think there's that's incredibly powerful and exciting and exotic for families, particularly with young kids, to do something like that, to go out into the desert, because it's not just the night sky experience itself, which is startling for any child who's born within city streets, and the effect that they have on the sky. To be able to see a dark sky is a fantastic thing. But also, of course, just being there in Jordan or in Morocco or wherever it is exotic anyway. Camels and all that kind of stuff. Tents for families. I think that's absolutely brilliant stuff.
And it's inspiring to the kids. When I was out in Jordan with this family group a couple of years ago now, that it was just wonderful to just see how it made the hairs stand up on the back of my neck to sort of see the stars in such glorious conditions. But to really have them really engaging with it and seeing planets through telescopes and asking questions and really obviously in their element, getting so much out of it is indeed extraordinary, and I think that this is a tremendously important educational tool as well.
Is there a transition? Do you have guests who's joined you for a family event and then maybe come back for an astronomy event and then wind up in your serious team going out to see an eclipse?
Not so much that progression. We've certainly had people who progressed from northern lights to eclipses and vice versa. We get a lot of movement, probably more in the adult domain there. But we haven't as yet had a sort of a family that's gone on to do one of the eclipse tours. But I'm sure the time will come for that.
Ali, we were talking just now about the Northern Lights, but also about the fact that because you do deal with those experiences as well. So it's taking people up north is not just the Northern Lights, but it's dog sledding, it's all that kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I absolutely love about arriving north of the Arctic Circle is I kind of like it when there's cloud cover when I arrive, when the plane descends through the cloud, and it's when you see the landscape revealed below, it's kind of like arriving on a completely different planet. It is a completely different world up there than urban UK or any part of the UK. You see it when you fly over at night. There is so much light in the UK, and there is so little light when you go, so little light pollution when you get north. And the whole experience just starts from the moment you land. We get clients saying, how will I get from the airport to the terminal? We say, well, you just walk, because they do clear the runways. It's quite useful. But then the whole experience, and you find yourself even on the transfers, you're maybe for an hour or 2 hours, and you're going down these roads which just have hardly any settlements between them. It is so remote and so isolated. Reindeer outnumber humans comfortably up there. And occasionally going down these roads, you'll see somebody walking towards you, and you think, where the hell did they come from? And where the hell are they going? It's amazing. The space. And then when you get out with the dogs, or going out with dogs, I went on an overnight dog sled safari a few years ago, and you go off into the wilderness and you stay in a wilderness cabin, and somewhere around 11 o'clock at night, these dogs started howling. And of course, it's a bit like being in the Yukon or Alaska. It's like you think, God, there's a pack of wolves out there. So we went outside to investigate, and the Aurora was blazing overhead. And it was really, really sort of primeval. Again, I go back to our ancestors, how they must have felt the Aurora and wolves and you name it. It sends shivers down. In fact, the hairs on my arms are standing up as I speak. Just thinking about it. So to actually do it and be there, it's an absolutely amazing place.
Tell me about the range of things that you do at the Aurora Zone. For one thing, I'm just the pair of you, since you both cover Northern Lights, you are strictly speaking, I suppose, competitors, but actually you're not really working in the same geographic areas, are you?
No, I think for one reason or another, our main market has been Finnish Lapland. And it's not somewhere that I think most people associate the Northern Lights with Iceland and with Norway, and specifically Tromsø. And I kind of put this down to two things. I think firstly, Tromsø and Reykjavik are immediately recognizable as on the map. Whereas in northern Finland, northern Sweden, you don't have places like that. The largest place I can think of in northern Finland is Rovaniemi, which is more associated with Santa holidays. But I think considerably fewer people will have heard of that than they will have had Reykjavik and Tromsø. I also think that the Icelandic and especially the Norway tourist board have a lot more money to spend, and they've done a magnificent job. Oh, seriously, they have done a fantastic job of promoting their destinations as Northern Lights destinations. But the fact of the matter is, you have just as much chance in northern Finland and northern Sweden as you have in Iceland or Norway. You're in the Aurora zone, and the best thing you can do is get yourself up there because when solar activity isn't particularly high, then the northern lights are only going to appear up there in that auroral zone. And I mean, this is one of the things we're saying about them appearing down here in the UK. It takes a pretty significant solar event for that to happen. And my experience of the lights down here is that they tend to appear, because I'm in Northumberland, and we can see them from the coast 5 to 10 times a year.
Oh, well, you can go out to the Kielder Forest, can't you?
Well, exactly. Or you can go up to Bamburgh, and sometimes you can see the Northern Lights behind this wonderful Norman castle, and it's an amazing sight. But they tend to be low on the horizon when you get this far south. They tend to lack the movement and the clarity, and again, it goes back to standing on that frozen lake when I've seen auroras where it's almost like a 3D light coming down, which have had even the locals standing sort of spellbound, and they see it 2-3 nights every week. And I've seen auroras where you've actually almost stepped back. It seems to be that close. The gods themselves reaching down to touch you. Absolutely spellbinding. But there's so much more to do up there as well. We down here, winters tend to be wet, and they're drab and they're grey, and I think the difference with the northern Scandinavia is that the majority of their precipitation falls as snow, and it's very dry snow. You can't build snowmen with the snow, it's too cold. But it's a very dry snow, and it makes it a much, much more pleasant environment to be out and about in. And you'll find the Finns and the Swedes, as winter arrives, and it's a long winter, embracing the outdoors, and they're getting they're getting leashes on the dogs, or the traces on the dogs. They're powering up their snowmobiles. They're strapping on their snowshoes and their cross-country skis. And if you go to Finland in particular, you'll see kids aged sort of 3 up to people aged 80 going about on their cross-country skis, going about their daily chores with kick sleds, and it's a very, very different way of life.
But the Aurora Borealis is not limited to the winter, is it? I mean, it's just solar activity. Oh, I suppose it depends where we are, where we're sloped. Yes.
It's all about the light.
I knew I was asking a dumb question as I started it. So
I mean, the first auroras appear up in northern Scandinavia in very late August, because basically the midnight sun. There's so much light that you can't see the aurora. That's basically what stops you from seeing it. And then early to mid-April, you have to be up extremely late at night waiting for darkness to fall, because the daylight hours are lengthening so much. It's one of those misnomers about the north, is that it's pitch black for 6 months of the year. And even in the heart of December, the darkest time of year, you get 3 to 4 hours of what they call blue time. It's sort of grey, bluish, almost ethereal light. It's an amazing thing, really quite spiritual or otherworldly. But yeah, the midnight sun is an amazing. Well, there's another fantastic celestial phenomenon that we're trying to push on our artisan travel website now.
Coming back to that, to the family question, who are your clientele, Ali?
I mean, the Aurora Zone, we have. The Aurora Zone is mostly adult-only holidays, although we've reduced the minimum age for next season to 15. But with Activities Abroad, our other brand, we have holidays that we have specifically designed for families to go northern light hunting. It's a difficult one, I think, because I think for really young kids, being out in -25 or -30 degrees centigrade at midnight isn't the best thing for them. They get bitterly cold, and they're not desperately interested. I was up at a place called Nellim in Finnish Lapland with my own kids. I think it was 2 years or 3 years ago, and at the time they would have been 9 and 6, and we were out at midnight. It was minus 27 degrees, and they just basically gone into this shelter, and there was a fire going, and they were under blankets, and they were just miserable. And eventually the lights came out. Well, I came inside because the lights appeared, and I said, Daisy, Archie, come and see the Northern Lights. And my daughter, who has obviously travelled far too much already, said, "Nah, Dad, I've already seen them."
Yeah.
And I really hope to God that they appreciate these trips when they grow a bit older. But no, we have developed family Northern Lights holidays, but we keep in mind the limitations caused by the environment and also by the cold that can occur in the heart of winter. I think February half terms or Easter's a better time to go, to be honest, for families.
I've been a travel journalist since 1988, and I've not seen the Northern Lights, so it's not a. And I think there's John down there in California. Well, John, have you seen the Northern Lights?
I am feeling so inspired right now to do it, just by listening to these stories. You guys are giving me chills. No, I have not, and I'm sitting here thinking, when could I actually go and do this?
You need to hop on a plane to Anchorage and then further up. I saw the lights near a place called Coldfoot on one of the ice roads last March. We were dancing on an ice road underneath the Northern Lights at 3 o'clock in the morning. Seriously, it doesn't get better than that. It's awesome stuff.
Sold.
Years ago, one of my regular journalists that I used to send out was somebody who some of you may know. Valerie Singleton from, do you remember Blue Peter and all the rest of it? And Val and I were good mates, and she used to do a lot of stuff for me. And she went off to Canada and was up north and saw the Northern Lights. And I remember her recording of it, which was just so evocative because she was with this woman who, a local, they were out in the middle of nowhere, and this woman was singing to the Northern Lights, and it just sounded kind of quirky. And Valerie was kind of describing what was going on, and then getting terribly excited because as she was singing, the Northern Lights were sort of coming towards them, and it just made the whole thing a kind of you got this impression that it was a moving, flowing experience that you, as I think David was saying earlier, that isn't captured in still images. Shane, you're the one who's recently been up there. Is that your impression of them?
Yeah, exactly. I describe them as dancing and twisting. It's a constant movement, and you can look at the sky, and then half a minute later, the sky is entirely different. And at one stage there, we had a huge green ribbon that went literally from one horizon to the other, almost an arc. And you looked up, and then within a minute it was gone. It was just so fast, and that's the thing with the Northern Lights. If it's not there 1 minute, it can be there the next minute, and then it's going to change again. So yeah, it moves very quickly.
And does it kind of surround you? I mean, I've had this impression, again, from photographs and from video that it's something that's sort of happening out there. So when you say it's from one horizon to the other, you mean in front of you, or is it actually happening behind you? If I turn around, is it behind me there as well?
Yeah. The deeper you get into the Arctic Circle, the more they're going to surround you. So where I was about 400 kilometers inside the Arctic Circle in the Enontekiö region in Finland, and it virtually started from in front of me, and I could put my head back and it went all the way behind me. It literally was one end to the other. But you need to go deeper into the Arctic Circle to see that, because that's when they become brighter and surround you more. And but again, and we were talking about temperatures, and I know we've heard temperatures of the minus 20s and minus 30. Well, we had minus 40 on the second night they appeared, and I can tell you that for an Australian based in Dubai, that is cold.
Minus 40 is a good one, though. Minus 40 is where Fahrenheit and centigrade meet. It's the only point at which they meet. I've always been fascinated by minus 40. It's fairly invigorating, it has to be said. But just going back to what Shane said, I was talking to one of our suppliers up in Inari in Finnish Lapland, and she was talking about the lights last season, last winter, and she said the beautiful thing is she who's lived with them all her life never ever gets bored because they are constantly changing. No two displays are the same. And she was also complaining the locals had cricked necks because there've been so many, so many of these displays. But that's the thing, you know, with different expressions. You get sort of stair rods, curtains of light shimmering, billowing. You get ribbons flying across the sky. You get wisps. It's an amazing thing.
I saw John was just asking about any tips for taking photographs of the Northern Lights, and I've got also a couple of really dumb newbie questions to ask as well. Firstly, are they? My impression is they're always essentially green, and is that true? And secondly, are they powerful enough to kind of to light up the surrounding area? I mean, it's mostly snow, so it would be easy to. Does it make everything appear green?
Green. Green is the predominant color. Basically, the color is determined by the reaction with the atmosphere, the gases in our atmosphere, and the majority of solar particles, if you like, hit our atmosphere. I think it's 60 to 120 miles, and that tends to be. I
can see David nodding there. Is he right?
Those stats are absolutely right. Yes, the Aurora doesn't start until you're actually about 100 kilometers above the Earth, so 60 miles above the Earth. It has to be that very rarefied atmosphere in order to get the ionization that produces the auroral light. Yeah, as you say, oxygen is what gives us that green light that we see, and indeed some red light that is higher up in the atmosphere. Yeah. Those colors are rarely perceived as well, as I said, with the eye as they are with a camera, but certainly on a good display you do get quite a lot of color in there, and it's absolutely amazing to see. They are a full sky phenomenon. Just coming back on something you were sort of touching on a few minutes ago, this is something which is just full sky, and no going up in an aeroplane and trying to see it out of a plane window will ever substitute being there on the ground, because it just takes up the full sky. Coming onto the images, you were talking then briefly about how to take pictures of Aurora. I've seen some tremendous pictures taken even with the most modest little sort of compact cameras. Ultimately, it pays to have a digital SLR where you can, you basically need to set certain parameters. You need to be able to set a reasonably long shutter speed of 3, 5, 10 seconds, something like that. You need to be able to open the aperture, that F ratio, as much as possible. So again, it's likely that a good DSLR with a good fast lens, as we call it, will be really beneficial. And you also need to be able to set the sensitivity, the ISO of the camera to quite a high level in order to be able to capture as much light as you possibly can. But if you're able to do those things, and you can do those with even sort of fairly modest compact cameras, and obviously have them on a tripod, because you're going to have a long shutter speed, as I say, 3, 5, 10 seconds, something like that, then yes, you can certainly get pictures. And I've seen some terrific shots with even some fairly modest cameras. It doesn't take sort of thousands of pounds worth of kit in order to capture it. It's really it's something which virtually everybody I know who goes up to see the Northern Lights wants to take a fantastic shot. They all spend a lot of time poring over the cameras, making sure the parameters are all correct, and they often get good results. But of course, the most important thing is always to watch, because, like we say, it's a feast for the eyes. The movement and everything isn't captured on a camera.
I stand just as good a chance as Shane does, with my compact against his DSLR. Yeah. But Shane, when you were there,
I was there. Yeah, one thing you must have a tripod. You have to have a tripod. Without a tripod, you're not going to get the photo. You need to have a camera which can go to manual, so whether you have a compact and shoot at manual, or a DSLR or mirrorless, you need a camera that shoots at manual. I was shooting at ISO 1000 at 30 seconds at about 5.6, and in fact, it was even more open than that. But I did some tests and even cut it down to 800, and there was a difference. When I hit 1000 and when I had the exposure at 30 seconds, the the photos were so vibrant. In fact, I didn't even need post-processing. All I did was crop the photo because I couldn't really see through the lens. It was so cold. Things were fogging up and misting up, so I couldn't really see. So that's the only thing. So if you can get a 20, even 30-second exposure, you can really get something special. But of course, the bigger the camera, the bigger the sensor size on the camera. So a mirrorless is bigger than a compact, and a DSLR can be the same size or bigger than a mirrorless. Then the more light it lets in, and the shorter your shutter speeds, and the better your photos. But you can get it with any camera, but you need the tripod with the full manual setting.
And I'm guessing you probably need, Ali, you'll know, you probably need more than one night to get this right, because the first night you'll cock it up and your batteries will run out when they're in the cold.
The problem with batteries in the cold, it's great in northern Scandinavia. You see these car parking spaces, and they've got these little sort of electricity chargers, and you connect your battery to these electricity chargers because they can just run down overnight. So one of the things we always put in our trip dossiers is take as many batteries as you can and go out fully charged, because you will lose them very, very quickly. Absolutely. It's the same with mobile phone.
And keep the cameras and keep the spare batteries against your body. Don't put them in your bag. So I put the spare batteries in my pocket against my chest, and I only used the one. As soon as that died, then I took it out. And with a full DSLR battery in the cold, I was getting only half an hour.
Well, you have a very cold heart, Shane.
Yes, we had very cold nights, but it was wonderful. But it was a dry cold, so it didn't seem as cold
it does,
as
absolutely,
it would have been.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, this has been fascinating, and as a result, we're really coming up to the top of the hour, so I want to close it down now. But I do want to ask one more question that's come in from Planeter.com, which we know to be our friend Ron Marder. And Ron is asking, are there any events that we should pay attention to in the next few months? Which is a pretty simple question to ask David, I would think, because you're covering the full panoply of celestial events.
Okay. Well, obviously we've had our total eclipse for 2015, but there are some astronomical events coming up. There is annual meteor showers, which obviously occur each year, and in fact in April there is the Lyrids.
The Perseid showers, or the
Perseids are in August. Yes, they're one of the main ones that occur every year. If you're out in the summer, and of course they're also nice ones to see because it's August the 12th, 13th, so it's warmer to stand out there in quite such cold conditions. But anywhere in sort of northern Europe, if you're going out, you can see the Perseid meteor shower, and that doesn't require you to travel anywhere exotic to see it. And similarly, in April we've got a slightly lesser meteor shower, which is the Lyrids, which would be very interesting to see. There's an eclipse of the moon later on in the year, in fact, in September, that we'll be able to see from here as well. So that's another thing to look out for, and that'll be something that'll be visible from the UK.
In Ron's case, he's out right now. He's either in Mexico or Las Vegas. So anything in his direction, and John's for that matter, that you're aware of in the bottom half of North America.
Right. Well, they will have the same sort of visibility. In fact, this is an event which will be visible all around. As the Earth rotates, so it's the same sort of portion of the globe that is then facing the sky, and we'll see these incoming meteors in the case of meteor showers. There is an eclipse of the moon, in fact, that is visible from the US. I must admit, I'd have to look up the date of it. I forget it off the top of my head, but I think that's coming up. In fact, it will be 2 weeks from the eclipse that happened last Friday, so next week there will be an eclipse of the moon that will be visible from the US.
Presumably we can look directly at the moon.
Sorry,
Ali?
I'm just saying, presumably we can look directly at that one rather than needing any special glasses on.
Yes. What happens there? Sorry, if you need explanation, it's basically it's the reverse situation. If you have the Earth is in fact in the middle between the Sun on one side and the Moon on the other, so the light from the Sun refracts around the atmosphere of the Earth, and casts this sort of red-coloured glow onto the moon, and the brightness of that eclipse is always dependent upon the transparency of the atmosphere of the Earth. So if we've had volcanic events and things like that happening, then it casts a much redder glow, and you often get this deep sort of copper-coloured moon visible in the evening sky. So it's obviously a full moon, but yeah, you see it with the naked eye. They're actually very interesting to see. It's only half the globe that get to see them on each one, but they do occur sort of with reasonable regularity. And in fact, as I said, the next one visible from the UK is in September.
Can I just add that? I mean, it's an annual phenomenon, but the midnight sun is something that is just an amazing experience. To sit at midnight in full daylight is absolutely bonkers. I'm going to Finland on the 18th of June, and a friend and I were going to start cycling at midnight on the 20th of June. For 24 hours, we're going to cycle in daylight under the midnight sun. Fortunately, it's a very energizing thing, the midnight sun, because we're going to need every little bit we can get. But it's you know, everybody talks about the darkness you get in Scandinavia in the winter. The absolute opposite is true in the summer, and again, it's an amazing thing to behold. It just does your body clock in completely. Fascinating. It's something everybody should have a look at.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Okay, we'll sign up for that. Thank you everybody for joining me, and I hope that those watching have been inspired, because I certainly have. I'm determined to go and see the Northern Lights now, and one or two other celestial happenings, I think. So yes, that's and I must say I grew up sailing, and am one of the few people I know who actually does have a sextant and knows how to use it. I can plot my position from the sun and from the stars. So there you go. So asking a dumb question like I did earlier on about the Aurora Borealis is rather embarrassing, but never mind, we won't go there. I'm going to put everybody's links in the notes. I think most of them are already there anyway. So if you want to follow up on any of the things that have been said, then do get in touch with everybody directly. And for next week, I have no idea what I'm going to do next week, but Mike and I will talk, and maybe we'll come up with one of his excellent presentations. So we'll see then, and I'll promote it in the usual way. So thank you everybody for watching, and thank you to my guests for joining me. Bye for now.
Very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.